Okay, go ahead.
So at our firm, Play Across Spectrum, is focused on the IDD community, not just autism. If you can't tell, I have just a few letters after my name. What it means is I spent way too much time in school. And the purpose of this presentation is to inform about ABLE accounts, but what I learned the first couple times I started wanting to talk about these is, why should you open an ABLE account? So I actually start with a little bit, a high-level overview of government benefits, because that's one of the primary reasons that people are first hearing or looking to establish an ABLE account. Then I go over a little bit about ABLE accounts, and then I wrap up with ABLE accounts versus trusts, a little information comparing the two. But please feel free to stop, ask along if there's any questions. Also, if anyone has any questions after this, I did send Pat a copy of the PowerPoint. I know there's one person who couldn't see it. I am happy for this to be shared. It's all, you know, public information for anyone who can put it together. Really want as many people to help as open an account as possible. If anybody needs assistance opening an ABLE account or questions now or in the future, feel free to ask me. I am pretty involved on the state level, Connecticut's ASD waiver committee, board member of Focus and ASRC. And so there we go. I'm gonna start. Okay. So I pretty much just went over this. So we're going to skip this one. And again, it's a little bit specific to Connecticut. We don't currently have an ABLE account. And so I also find that's where a lot of information or lack thereof, and one of the main reasons I started doing this. So government benefits, there's money, there's medical, and there's housing. So there's Social Security income, there's Ssdi, disability, and then there's Medicaid and Medicare. So I'm going to do a brief overview of these, how they fit together, and maybe a little bit on the housing. I'll probably skip it though. So when we hear Social Security, there's two types, and for the purpose of this presentation, I do overly generalize just to oversimplify. So Social Security disability, as a general rule, is qualified off work history. If somebody is disabled and they work, they paid into the insurance, the system, then they are able to qualify for Social Security disability. If a parent worked and paid into the system and they're either disabled, retired, or passed away, then there are benefits as well. And Social Security disability really goes along with Medicare. So think of Social Security disability more like traditional retirement, what you might get at 66, 67, full retirement age. It's similar, and hence Medicare at 65. Then there's SSI, which is generally low income. The max benefit per month is currently $781. That you can qualify for, generally speaking, starting at 18. And SSI equals Medicaid. So if we can remember that, if we can remember SSI and Medicaid, Ssdi and Medicare. So SSI and Medicaid are, I would call the most, they're the gateway to services. So in Connecticut, for example, Husky is Medicaid. There's lots of different types of Husky. They cover different services and resources. But if you hear Husky, you know, A, C, or D, that is Medicaid. And overly, again, generally speaking, you qualify for SSI, you qualify for Medicaid. There's strict income limits. There's strict asset limits. So in Connecticut, you can have $1,600 to your name. The reason for that, if you hear 2,000 a lot, is because the state of Connecticut's what's called a 209B state, What that means is we had rules and regulations before the government did 40, 50 years ago, and we haven't changed them. And Connecticut really does need that $400. The reason you can technically qualify for SSI prior to 18, however, the parent's income is a factor prior to 18. So as a general rule, especially in Connecticut, I find that's usually not the case. Usually it's at 18. And feel free to type questions or anything along the way. So then there's Ssdi, Social Security Disability, and Medicare. So for Social Security Disability, there is no asset limit. So you can have $2 million and you can't work, you're disabled, you paid in, or a family member paid into the system, and you qualify for that benefit. And after 2 years, you qualify for Medicare. There is certain exceptions to the 2-year period, but for the most part, it's 2 years. There's also no limit on income, with the exception of if you're working. They're saying if you're working and making over a certain amount, $1,260 a month, that you are considered employed, not disabled. Another thing to mention is that if a parent is retired, disabled, or deceased, then the disabled adult child will qualify for Social Security Disability and subsequently Medicare. I have next couple slides, just like a really brief overview. I try to keep it a little simple as far as the differences between Social Security income, Social Security Disability. There's definitely going to be a test on this afterwards, so please take notes.
Andrea,
Yes.
I just wanted to make an announcement that anyone who's on the phone that has no screen or no chat ability, if they press number 9, it will let us know that they want to talk or ask
Perfect.
a question. So that's number 9 if you're going through the phone.
So this is the last slide, and again, it's a nice little overview on Medicare, Medicaid, how they interlap. So the next part is the second part where I go on and I talk about ABLE accounts. Does anybody have any questions on what I went over? I went through it a little quickly, and I can go back, or I can elaborate a little bit more on some of the benefits as well.
If anyone has a question, you can either do a raise your hand, or you can unmute yourself, or you can send it in chat. Any questions? Okay, go ahead, Andrew.
So again, just before I move on to the next part, the main reason that someone I find is looking into an ABLE account is in order to hide assets in order to qualify for what's usually SSI and Medicaid. So Husky, SSI, which is the gateway to most services. So most DDS services, you need to be on Medicaid, the autism waiver, Medicaid. So SSI and Medicaid with that asset limit is one of the is a big reason for the ABLE accounts. So what is an ABLE account? An ABLE account, they're still relatively new. They're tax advantage retirement accounts for those with disabilities. They'll allow families to establish a vehicle and for saving without impacting government benefits. So they're a really great tool for not needing to spend all of the money in order to qualify for Medicaid, as we discussed earlier. There are some other really great and awesome and unique advantages to ABLE accounts as well, but just wanted to highlight that's I would say that the main one. ABLE accounts are also called a 529A, the A for ABLE. If you've heard the term 529, that's also what we call a college savings plan. In Connecticut, we call it a CHET, C-H-E-T. So they're modeled after a very similar law. That's why they're actually run by the states. So that's why Connecticut doesn't have one, even though there is federal legislation. As long as another state allows it, you are able to open one in any state. Again, Connecticut's unique in that we have a $1,600 asset limit. However, most states it's $2,000. So you can have $20,000 in a ABLE account, and that will not count towards the total of $1,600. And that money can grow tax-free for as long as it needs to. And it can be used for a wide variety of things. The government is purposely very liberal in what is considered a disability expense. So an ABLE account, I'm going to encourage this. I get a lot of questions, well, can my ABLE account pay for this? Can it pay for that? There was a recent announcement clarifying that it can pay for food without impacting benefits. So that was an announcement that they've made. Most of the
I brought it down. I muted it.
We good? So as far as what is a qualified disability expense, I would encourage to be very liberal. So it's probably harder to justify an expense that is not a qualified disability expense. So I think it would be almost hard pressed to find something that's not. So I am deciding to do this on the spot. I noticed in my office I have a couple extra Chromebooks. They're a little bit older. I'm going to ask if anyone wants to try to find an expense that would not be covered, and you get it right, I will send you a Chromebook for free. Do you want to take a second? And the point of this exercise is to say it is very generous, right? That I've only really ran into one or two instances where an expense might not have been considered a qualified disability expense. So,
Okay, about video games.
So does he communicate with friends or on the video games, right? There's the chats, most of them are social, right? Especially if it's autism, I definitely think that, or really any disability, I think a very good argument could be made for socialization. Hair accessories like bows, I'm trying to think about that one. Okay. That one's pretty, I don't know, I think I might be stumped. I think, but I also don't know how much bows will cost, but I definitely think that is the spirit of my challenge.
Why wouldn't that be personal grooming?
I think it could be, but how would it be specific to a disability? Maybe if they had any kind of disability that might impact hair in any way, pulling of the hair or something, then I think you could definitely warrant it. So I definitely think the argument could be made. In order to attend concerts, I definitely think, once again, you could very well make the argument that it's, for example, if it's autism, it's a special interest or social, and I'm not saying to challenge the IRS, but I haven't seen anything questioned yet. Vacations, absolutely. You just need to, for example, there's usually accommodations on vacations, or Vacations that's a very common question. And the answer is almost certainly yes. So, and as far as a reward to use for during therapy, I don't think it's so much the reason as what it's used for, but that also is a very good question. Absolutely, the therapeutic horseback riding, that's not even a question. So, thank you for mentioning tolls. Transportation's on there, so absolutely. So, you can buy a house, you can buy pretty much everything. So, and again, like concerts, I mean, if food counts, right? You could have food at a concert, transportation to the concert. As a general rule, they seem to be really good. So, I think Renee wins not only for challenging me, but also helping, or she's winning definitely because not only do I like the challenge, I like the logic that was used afterwards. Throwing a party, again, I would say that if there was anything specific, if you can justify it in your head, you're probably pretty good. The chance of ever being asked about it is probably close to zero. I don't have an attorney on the line with me today, so I can say that. House appliance, again, housing's there, right? So really don't see much really challenged. So yeah, I'll give you the example of one I ran into, and that would be if it's really not for their benefit. And so, for example, there was a church that was they received the benefits, and it was Archdiocese of Hartford, and the individual was living there, and the church wanted a new gazebo. And I really didn't think that using the money from Enable to buy the church of a gazebo was really for that person's benefit. I mean, maybe you could argue, a ramp or something, but the entire gazebo, it was really for the church. I really don't think it was for, the individual who was a resident there. So that would be an example I ran into where I didn't necessarily think they had the best case. I would say all of these are pretty good. Correct. And
Quick question, Andrew. Sorry.
Yep.
So if the individual wanted to make a charitable donation, that doesn't count. So that would be a charitable donation to the church?
This was a little complicated, well, because the church also controlled that person's money. So that wouldn't have been a good idea.
Oh, the church. Oh, okay. That's different.
Yeah, it was the church asking me for the person. So it was a little self-serving. Home improvement, absolutely. That would call under housing. Correct. As long as it benefits the individual, again, in a way that you could justify has something to do with the disability expense, I would go for it. I find too many people are either not using them or not spending the money. Transportation, yes. Now, one thing that is a little bit more liberal with the ABLE accounts for special needs trusts that we'll get into later is that a lot of special needs trusts mean the sole benefit. So in the car example, if mom bought a car and drove the son around 90% of the time, or even 100% of the time, but if she was at the grocery store and bought something for herself and not her son, the argument could be made it was not her sole benefit. So that's something I run into. To clarify, that is not applicable to ABLE accounts. Again, they're really more the benefit of, not the test of the sole benefit of. So with all of this, you will hear conflicting information from my experience, from doing it, from that I really have never seen anything questioned to begin with. I would say it's better to use the account. If you can justify it, I'm pretty sure it's justifiable. So, and I vote Renee winning for stumping me the best. but also coming up with but still I would argue that yes, you could use the bows, but I do say that was the best stump I've had so far. So, who is eligible for an ABLE account? Individuals with significant disabilities, and the onset of the disability is prior to the age of 26. Now, to Trish, the answer is no.
Okay, repeat the question, because some people are on the
Sorry.
phone and they can't
Do
see
you
the chat.
do you have to spend a certain amount from the ABLE at any time? The answer is no, you don't have to. So if you don't need the money, you can leave it there. You don't have to spend it. So as far as the onset of disability, this is a common question. And it's not when the individual got approved for disability, it's when the disability started. So for example, autism, if it was diagnosed at 32, well, that's something that you're born with. So therefore you would be ABLE eligible. If there was a car accident or brain injury after 26, something along, or some other illness that developed after, then you would not be eligible for an ABLE account. And to answer a question that just popped up, can a parent contribute to an ABLE account after the dependent turns 18? The answer is absolutely. Anybody can contribute to the ABLE account. You are only allowed one ABLE account per individual. So a grandparent and a parent cannot open their own separate ABLE accounts. They have to contribute to the same one, but they are able to do so. That's a great question. So how do you know if you're eligible? If you're receiving SSI or Ssdi prior to age 26, you are automatically eligible. Again, talk to a financial planner who's knowledgeable about ABLEs. And they can be established by the individual themselves, parent, legal guardian, agent under power of attorney. And if a very common question is, do you need to be on SSI or Ssdi to open an ABLE account? And the answer is absolutely not. That's just one of the qualifying factors. So if you are not automatic under the SSI, Ssdi, then the qualification is a letter from a physician stating that the individual is disabled, and there's a notice just signed and dated by the doctor. Now, the disability is still what's considered the Social Security definition of disability. That does not mean that you need to be on Social Security or Social Security disability to meet the definition. So the test is you have a physician who's saying that you meet the Social Security definition of disability. So it's a lot of times individuals will open an ABLE account in the process of applying for Social Security income to keep that assets below 1,600. It's one of the biggest uses of an ABLE account I find is actually to open an ABLE account prior to applying for SSI. If you owe money to SSI, can you still open an ABLE account to an individual? I don't see why not. I mean, to answer that question, because anyone could put money in once it's opened. I can't say what the government might do about it, but I don't see anything stopping you from opening one. So, okay. And I think I'm going to get to this slide later. Sorry.
Sorry, Andrew, I got a question that came to me privately rather than to everyone. Oh, no, I'm sorry, they repeated it later. Excuse me. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no problem.
You already answered it.
So again, contributions can be made by anyone. You do not get a deduction on your federal income taxes. One thing that I find is very confusing is the person's making too much money, they're going to get kicked off Husky or their Social Security disability or their Social Security income. An ABLE account will not help with lowering income. For example, you can use the money in ABLE account to pay rent or buy a house, and it's excluded from that part of Section 8. However, it will not reduce your income, not like a 401k or an IRA. So it'll make the money invisible, but it won't lower the taxable income for any of the benefits that most people receive. So if you have too much money coming in every month, an ABLE is not a solution for an income-based benefit. However, if there are too many assets, and that might be the reason, or there's anticipated too much assets, then an ABLE account will help. So, any questions so far? Investments do grow tax-free. If you put in $10,000 and it grows to $50,000, you can take out all of $50,000 for qualified disability expense. The account owners have the ability to control their investments. It is, so in Connecticut, because we don't have one, we also don't have a deduction. However, we do allow a deduction for CHET. That's the Connecticut Higher Education Trust, 529. Generally, it's with TIAA-CREF. There, you can do them with the Hartford. I generally advise against it. So its general rule is TIAA-CREF. You are allowed to transfer up to $15,000 a year from a CHET to an ABLE. And in Connecticut, you are allowed to still keep that tax deduction. So if you are going to put $10,000 into an ABLE account and you want to put it in a CHET first, you could probably save roughly about $600 on your state of Connecticut taxes for the two-step process. Very common, they're called UGMA or UTMA, Uniform Gift to Minors Act, Uniform Transfer to Minors Act. These are usually the accounts at the bank that grandma opened, usually have maybe a couple $1,000s in them. I would say prior to the ABLE account, this money was spent in order to qualify for SSI or Ssdi, as this money is irrevocably in the child's name. I do find that money that would be in a UGMA, UTMA, does usually make much sense to move it to actually either a CHET if they are going to college, and there's other reasons for that, or an ABLE account as well. So I do think if any of these exist, it's a perfect opportunity to potentially move them into an ABLE account. So again, this is 529 plan. ABLE accounts are 529A. They follow lots of very, again, similar rules. One thing to also keep in mind is 529 plans. You are usually able to change the beneficiary. They also have some very flexible rules. Their definition of family is what I would like to call like a Arkansas definition of family. Your second cousin once removed is a family member. They're very liberal in being able to change who can use the money from a 529 plan. So again, any money you make, you don't pay taxes on. If you take the money out for a qualified disability expense, it's not subject to any income tax. There are a few caveats, negatives with an ABLE account. So for any money that it's made that is not a qualified disability expense, there is 10% penalty and current income. Now, if you put in 10,000, I have a question. Let's see if anyone can get this. If you put in $10,000 into an ABLE account and it grows to $20,000 and the church wants to build a gazebo for $10,000 and the money comes out of the ABLE account, is there a penalty? So you put in 10,000, it's made 10,000. Now it's 20,000. And the church wants a gazebo for $10,000, which is not a qualified disability expense. Is there a penalty?
I would think so, unless you can take it on as a charitable deduction. But would that make a difference?
No, it wouldn't make a.
Just trying.
Okay, everyone is wrong, and that's okay. So with 520, and I'll explain why. With 529s and 529As, you are allowed to take out the money that you put in without a penalty. The same rule applies to Roth IRAs. So in that example, the first 10,000 was a return of their money. There was no penalty. So, and the next 10,000, that would be subject to the rules. I'll give you guys, know it's tax time. So let's say that you're married, you can deduct 10,000 a year for putting money into a 529. That actually can carry over 5 years. I have an individual who's married with no kids who every 5 years puts in $50,000. He takes it out a week later. He's made no interest in a week, and he deducts $10,000 from his state of Connecticut income tax for the next 5 years, and he pays no penalty. The only penalty he would pay is any interest on what he has made in that week. That part is unique to Connecticut. We currently do not recapture. So even private school or college, if you put money in a 529 and you take it out a week later, you do get the tax deduction. It's 5,000 single, 10,000 married, and that can carry on for 5 years. So if you did more, you would just get the deduction over up to 5 years. So, and just before I repeat it, the example with what the other person did, I think is the part to repeat. Okay, so a married couple in their 50s has no children. They have a 529 account with Chet, the state of Connecticut. They put in $50,000, and a week later they take that $50,000 out. Let's assume it made no interest in a week. They will get to deduct $10,000 from their state of Connecticut income tax for the next 5 years. If they did 60,000, they would still be limited to 10,000 a year for 5 years. Because it's only what you make that is subject to the income tax and 10% penalty. I'm using the example of a 529. You could do 10,000 in ABLE, take it out the next day, and buy a gazebo. There would be no penalty. The rules apply to, okay, so I'm going to answer the 100,000, but the rules apply to a 529 and a 529A ABLE, but it's only the 529 where you get the tax deduction. So that's why I gave it in that example, because why else would you put in 50,000 into an ABLE and then take it out a week later? As far as the 100,000 rule, ABLE accounts are not accounts designed to hold lots of money. How long do you have to bring the balance below? It's, I mean, similar to any asset limit, right? So Social Security looks monthly. So I would say that if you're getting close to that 100,000, I would definitely look to either A, spend it, B, meet with an attorney, or C, both. I wouldn't wait until you're 90,000. If you want a number, I would say if your ABLE account's at about 75,000, I would consider meeting with an attorney if you haven't at that point. As a general rule, we don't recommend ABLE accounts get above 100,000 for two reasons. One is then they are disqualified from most benefits, which is the main reason individuals open them. Also, ABLE accounts have something called a Medicaid payback provision. In Connecticut and most states, there are exceptions. What this means is if you are receiving services and you pass away and there's money in the individual passes away and there's money in the account, then the state has a right to that money first. Did everybody get that? This is the biggest negative with an ABLE account. So this is a great question, Jennifer. It's two parts. One is if you were denied for having too much income, I assume your daughter's under 18 because your income was there. So, and again, an ABLE account, should you open one? Probably, but it won't reduce your income. It will only hide assets. So if you were denied SSI because your daughter was under 18 and you had too much income, you could double check. The threshold is really, really low. Most people, again, don't qualify. But if you were denied for assets and not income, then I think the ABLE account is perfect and to qualify your daughter. So hopefully that answers Jennifer's question. For Renee, so only upon death does the state have a right to be paid back. So if there's any money left in the account when the beneficiary passes away, then the state is paid back for, it can get a little complicated, but let's just say as a general rule, services provided. There's some things that are considered and aren't, but let's just go with that. So yes, Husky is Medicaid. That's you know, is state benefit. If you're a state employee and it's state health insurance, I'm assuming that's not what we mean. So now, if an individual is not receiving any benefits and never has, then the Medicaid payback provision does apply, but there's nothing to pay back. Also, they can save more than $100,000 because they're not worried about losing SSI. So, and there are times when that can make sense because again, you need a qualifying disability. That doesn't mean that you can't work. For example, as a general rule, there is up to $15,000 a year that can be put into an ABLE account. However, if the beneficiary is working, then the limit is a little over now, $26,000 per year, and as long as they are not contributing to a 401k. So the law does provide some opportunity for an individual who's working to put even more money into an ABLE account. So, for example, I have an ABLE account. Mine is with Fidelity in Massachusetts. I'm working, as long as I'm not contributing to a 401k, then I am able to put money in my ABLE account up to $26,000 a year if I wanted to. Any questions so far on any of this? Another interesting point, there's something called the Savers Credit, which pertains to IRAs as well as ABLE accounts. The government gives a tax credit if you qualify and put money in an ABLE account. Think of it like a 401k. It's free money. So if you or the individual qualifies for the Savers Credit, then it definitely can make a lot of sense to put money in an ABLE account, because then, again, depending on the dollar amount, your taxes, your specific situation, the government can give you an additional couple $1,000s for putting money in an ABLE account. And that's called the Savers Credit. Jennifer, the answer is yes, and that is the next part. I'll go over that high level. Opening an ABLE account. So as a general rule, ABLE accounts are opened directly with the company and the state. There's one state, you probably see them advertised a lot, ABLE Now, which is Virginia. They do have an aversion that financial advisors, as a general rule, some can sell, still not very many yet. It has very high upfront fees, and an ABLE account, in my opinion, is really, they're not designed to be really high dollar amount savings as a general rule. Again, there are some exceptions. So you're really going to want to look at one of the next, I narrow it down to 2 specific ABLE accounts in a specific state. And again, as far as being able to, okay, I got distracted with a question, so I'm going to answer it. A person with high functioning autism, Pat, I won't go into functioning labels, with a work history qualifies for Social Security ABLE. So I have autism, I'm working, I have an ABLE account. Did that answer the question, Lisa? They just need a letter from a doctor. If you would like a sample letter to give to your doctor so they can sign it, if I think Pat has my copy that's whited out. If not, I can give it to her, or you can email me. I have a sample letter that I submitted with my own ABLE account in order to open it. So I'm happy to share that with you so a doctor can sign, just has your diagnosis that you qualify. Really relatively simple, especially in Connecticut. So really just a doctor's letter saying.
Andrew, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. We just had a couple people join us. I think they thought we were starting at 7 rather than at 6. So they're joining a little late. So welcome to Laura. And, hi, Laura, and welcome to, who else joined us? Marianne? Mariari, I think. Well, she might have been on before. Maybe she fell off and came back on. So I just want to let you know we had someone else join us. So go ahead.
Great. So again, quick recap so far. We went over a really high level of government benefits, which is a reason that many people want to open an ABLE account, is to qualify or maintain benefits. We just finished going over some of the, I called it some of the boring details on ABLE accounts, and really joined at a good time. We're going over actually how to open one, and we just started that part. So, and if happy to send the presentation along afterwards, as well as, if anyone has any additional questions, please feel free to again, reach out to me or Pat afterwards.
I can send the presentation, if it's all right with you, Andrew, I can send the presentation to everyone when we're done. Everyone who
Yes,
signed in with me.
or actually, I think it would be better. Do you have I have a 2-page, a double-sided on ABLE accounts in Connecticut. You have that, Pat?
You can send it to me. I don't think I have that. I
I
might
think
have it.
that's just a little bit easier to use,
Okay.
right? Or it has a lot of all the same information, just more condensed.
Okay.
Again, happy to share the PowerPoint, but 40 pages of information is a lot.
Right. All right. So yeah, so I'll send out that to everyone who registered with me when we're done. Okay.
So, yep. So Lisa asked a great question. What's the purpose of hiding money if the person would not qualify for SSI, IQ over 70? Well, so first off, you can qualify for SSI regardless of your IQ. IQ below 70 is for DDS services. Above 70, with autism, you need to be on the waiver in the wait list. So in order to get on the wait list, you do need to qualify for SSI, Medicaid, in which case the hiding of the money, so you're below that $1,600, would be relevant. If somebody is not receiving SSI, or Medicaid, or any benefit with asset limit, then there's no purpose in hiding the money. There can still be good reasons to open an ABLE account if an individual's not receiving benefits, such as the tax-free growth, the ability to take it before retirement, the potential, I'll call it the government match of the savers credit. So I definitely would say that although you absolutely can, and again, I have an ABLE account for myself for that reason, even though I'm not on any benefits. However, I would say that the vast majority, that's not the case, although it still can be a great way to save regardless. That answer the question? Great. Funding an ABLE account. I don't know why I made a slide on this. However you get money to them, they will accept it. I think if you could get a pigeon to fly it to their office and drop a check, they'd take it. However, I mean, I don't know if they can accept Bitcoin yet, maybe, who knows. But as a general rule, however you get them money, they are happy to take it. You can set up direct deposit. You can take a picture of a check and deposit it. You can mail a check. You can also move from a 529 or another state's ABLE account into the current ABLE account. Direct deposit, absolutely. And again, you're only allowed one ABLE account at a time per individual. So if there's 2 parents or a parent and a grandparent, there's still only one ABLE account. The answer is yes and no. It might not be the best idea for other reasons. Marianne asked, can money from Social Security be direct deposited into an ABLE? There's some other reasons. I'd be curious of the reason as to why. I think I have an idea in my head as the reason it's being asked. And if that's the case and my assumption is correct, I would not recommend that. It's probably better to have a little bit of a paper trail. So let's go with that, even if it could be done in an instance that I, just as a general rule, don't recommend it. You can have some money, pulled from the bank account to the ABLE account on the same day that Social Security is deposited, and that's what I would recommend. So again, ongoing contributions, they're automatic. When you open an ABLE account, you are given investment options that include, similar to a 401k, you have roughly about a dozen options, including a safe, either FDIC insured or similar money market savings account. And again, what you should choose depends on the individual circumstances. If you're thinking to use the money in the near future, would definitely consider keeping it in cash. Again, similar to if you were investing it or the bank. One thing with ABLE accounts and 529 plans, you are only allowed to change your investment allocation twice a year. So I don't ever see this as being an issue. But for example, if you wanted to try to move in and out of the stock market right now, you couldn't really do that with an ABLE account. I've never run into that being an issue, but it is a rule that does exist. You can only change your investments twice a year. Opening an ABLE account. So if you're transferring, you will need a statement from the old 529 or the old ABLE account. Whoever you are opening the ABLE account with has a form. I find generally companies are more than happy to help you get more money to them. So that's generally a fairly easy process to consider. There are no taxes for transferring as general rule. So from these above, similar to a 401k or an IRA rollover, or an IRA to an IRA. So you're just moving from one type of similar account to another. So there are lots of states with 529 plans. However, for the purpose of this presentation, I am going to highlight the two plans that I recommend the most and the reasons I recommend them. I will say that especially with ABLE accounts, it's important to consider, again, the reason that you're doing this. And as a general rule, it's not as much about the investments and the fee for the investments. We're not generally talking about dollar amounts that get extremely significant. So yes, fees do matter. Yes, investment performance matters. However, especially with ABLE accounts, there are lots of other things to consider. Massachusetts uses Fidelity for their ABLE accounts. I have an ABLE account with Fidelity in Massachusetts. Pros, there is no fee to open. There is no fee to maintain. This is the only option available to Connecticut residents with that feature. You can put $100 in a Massachusetts Fidelity ABLE account, and you will not have a fee to maintain it, open it, or transfer money in or out of it. That is very unique. The fees for the investments are a little bit higher because Fidelity is actively managing them. Whether or not Fidelity will do better than the lower cost investments is an argument as long as time, but it is worth mentioning that could be a con, could also be a pro. Fidelity could do better. And that's a fee for the managing of the investments in stocks or bonds. So, and it's a couple, let's say it's 0.5% higher. So just to give you an example on the number that I'm, talking about, on $10,000, right? I mean, we're really talking about $50 a year of investment fees that Fidelity's hoping they'll do better than that. So we're really not talking about much difference. I also find if somebody has a Fidelity account, Fidelity's very nice because then it's very easy to open. They have a lot of information already. You have your accounts more or less in one place, and it's easier to have it consolidated, easier to see what you have and move things around. The biggest con with Fidelity in Massachusetts is that if you want to actively spend the money in the ABLE account, Fidelity has a two-step process. You have to transfer to one of their completely free checking debit card accounts, and then you spend the money. So in order to utilize Fidelity, you do need two accounts. Although you get a free debit card, you can't just say, I have 10,000 in my ABLE account. I want to go buy a computer. You write a check. that will not clear. So you would need to move the money from the ABLE account to the checking account. As long as it's spent within the month, it does not hurt Social Security for those asset tests. Any questions on Fidelity? So the next state that I recommend is Ohio. They were the first state to offer ABLE accounts. They have a really, really great system for keeping track of expenses with their debit card. They also offer an FDIC insurance option. Now, Fidelity has a money market savings account that is not covered technically by FDIC. So if Fidelity went bankrupt, it would be at risk. But Ohio does offer an FDIC. To go back to that example with the church, because they were managing the person's money, although they knew the chance was about zero because they could be liable, they preferred to have the FDIC insurance on the account. As a general rule, I don't find that to be the main motivating factor. Ohio does have a maintenance fee. So again, if you have a relatively small balance and you're not actively spending it, or if you don't know if you will or will not, $30 a year can eat away at $100 very quickly. So that is a con with Ohio in the stable account. But I would say that they are a very, very good option, especially if the person is probably going to more actively use their ABLE account for, more ongoing expenses. Fidelity, if you use it, it's just a little extra process. You're not going to use it to buy some food at the gas station, right? It's really going to be a planned expense. So you could sometimes that could be a pro. I've seen mentioned before, Ohio does not allow for what dual guardianship in a debit card. I'm going to just be very blunt here. If you're in this situation, then you probably should just get a better estate planning attorney anyway, or use Fidelity. It's a very unique situation where some documents aren't quite spelled out correctly. So I'm mentioning it as a con. It applies to almost nobody I've really run into. So if everyone wants to take a minute or two and write these down or take a screenshot, here are the links you can go to open an ABLE account online on your own. To answer Jennifer's question earlier, I am more than happy to walk anybody through the steps to open an ABLE account. I am more familiar with Fidelities, although I've helped people open not just these, but any states. So and as far as being, again, a financial advisor, I can be the agent on somebody's for Fidelity. Generally, I really only do that. I don't charge for that ever. So generally, it's somebody's already working with me and they want me just to be able to see all the accounts. And that way, just if they have questions, I can help, right? But that's what I do and how I treat being the financial advisor of an ABLE account. Fidelity, I work with Fidelity, authorizes me. Renee asked a question. Are you giving us this info so we can see how CT differs? My assumption is open in the state the individual resides. Good question. I'm giving you these options because Connecticut does not have one. We do not have an ABLE account. Now, we did put out a RFP, a request for proposals, for an ABLE account. I do know that Ohio bid on it specifically. I got a call from the person who runs Ohio thanking me for helping with the RFP. I did not take the credit for that. I did not have any involvement in that. Hopefully all the talks I've been doing have, educated people. And again, why doesn't Connecticut have one? Now, before the last part, which I promise you is the most boring, so if you're not falling asleep yet, you will. And that is, don't wait for Connecticut to open an ABLE account. If they do, nobody's saying it's going to be better in any way, shape, or form. Given Connecticut, who thinks that Connecticut will do something better than all the other states have already? Okay.
I'm going to say something here. A few years ago, when we first started talking about ABLE accounts, probably maybe 4 years ago, I called the Treasury Department at the state, and they said they were looking at partnering with another state so that if you joined that state, whoever became their partner, there'd be lower or no fees, less fees, I guess. It would be in-state fees as opposed to out-of-state fees. But again, that was 4 years ago, and as far as I know, they haven't done anything yet.
And just so everyone on this call is aware, Ohio, which is stable account, essentially offered Connecticut it at no cost, right? No cost to Connecticut. And that's not good enough for Connecticut yet. We have to go through our process, our bids and our proposals. I will say the good thing about Connecticut potentially passing and having their own ABLE account is that we will more than likely, that might mean a tax deduction directly for an ABLE account. Now, some states give you the tax deduction no matter what 529 or ABLE account you do. They actually don't care whether it's their state or any others. They treat it exactly the same. Connecticut is, if we follow the similar path we've followed with 529 plans, then it has to be the Connecticut plan to get the tax deduction. But also in Connecticut, you can move it to another state immediately. New York State, for example, you have to leave it in New York in order to keep the tax deduction. That actually makes sense. However, that is not how we currently have it in Connecticut. So my moral of this story is Pat called many years ago. They were looking to partner with another state. I know at least one state who's tried to offer it to Connecticut at no charge for a while, and we are still not there yet. There were currently 2 bills being proposed this legislative session. Obviously, that's not happening. One just specified a tax deduction for ABLE accounts. There was nothing more specific than that. The ARC of Connecticut does usually send out legislative email blasts. Pat can send the info if people don't get them. Shannon Jacobine, if people want to get on their list specifically for if they want to testify on a bill. The other one did establish, specific money for the treasurer to help with an ABLE account. That would be good if Connecticut had one, more just for the education component, right? So you have somebody whose job it is to educate on ABLE accounts around the state as a full-time basis, right? Right now, it's more or less just me. So that would be a very positive thing if the state did fund that. I'm also willing to accept them paying me as well. And are you telling us about Mass and Ohio because you feel these are the best 2 options to consider? I find for the vast majority of people fall into 1 or 2 of those categories. There can definitely be other reasons to have other states. And if you have another state, that is not necessarily a reason to transfer. To oversimplify, Fidelity has no fees to open or maintain. And the Ohio has a very, very good system for keeping track of the debit card, credit card expenses. And their fees are lower for the investments themselves. So to answer the question, high level for most people that these are really the two to consider. I do have a blog post on my website. I do Able's in Connecticut. I do mention a few other options, but really they're all just about this. They're all so close to being the same. But if you have questions on any of that, I've done an analysis of all the states and happy to answer any questions. Okay, so I am going to go through this a little bit quicker. So this is on special needs trusts. And the reason I talk about special needs trusts is because they are set up a very similar reason to the reason many people set up ABLE accounts. They are set up to protect and preserve government benefits as a general rule. So people ask, should I open an ABLE account? Should I open a special needs trust? The answer is it depends. Now, there are many different types of special needs trusts. They can do some things ABLE accounts can't. ABLE accounts can do some things they can't. Sometimes it makes sense to have both. Sometimes it makes sense to have two special needs trusts and an ABLE account. I'm just going to give a high-level overview. I'm going to go over the main two types of special needs trusts. And again, it's very important that these are done correctly. I usually do these presentations with an attorney, not because I don't know the information, but because there's just so much overlap. The one I was going to have on with me tonight was not feeling well. But I definitely would say, I would find many times when I'm talking to someone about an ABLE account, the conversation turns into, well, why are you looking to an ABLE account? Have you looked at your estate plan, your will, etc.? And honestly, about half the time, I end up recommending that, you know, let's work with an attorney first, and let's get all of those things together in a row, and then let's do the ABLE account, right? So I find that although you absolutely can open an ABLE account, and there's lots of good reasons to do so before seeing an attorney, I definitely would find that vast majority of discussions about ABLE accounts really lead into special needs trusts. And there's really two types. There's self-settled, called also first party, and there's third party. First party is very similar to an ABLE account in the way that the state of Connecticut has to be paid back for any money that is not spent. A third party is better because the state does not get to be paid back. I cannot stress enough how much better a third party is than a first party. A first party means it was that person's money. So let's say, I'm going to just use me as an example, and I'm not trying to protect any government benefits, but it'll make things easier. Let's say I was in a car accident and I was paid a settlement of $1 million. Well, that might disqualify me from benefits over the course of my life, which would well exceed $1 million. So what we are able to do is we are able to put that money in a first party special needs trust in order to preserve those important benefits. Now, if there's money left in the account when the individual passes away, the state does have a right to claim the benefits that have been provided that they paid out with a first party special needs trust. First party are also a lot more regulated by the court. You need court approval for using the money for them. They're a lot more strict than than a third party or an ABLE account. So they can be set up where the money might not even be allowed to be invested, or the court has to approve every single distribution. And Renee asked a great question: can a special needs trust be transferred into an ABLE account? The answer is, it depends. I'll give you a great example where this made sense. So if it is a self-settled, a first party special needs trust, then there's still going to be a payback provision. Also, if it's not a lot of money, meaning it's, you know, 75,000 or under, you're not getting too close to that 100,000, then, and it's a first party trust, then it could make lots of sense to transfer that to an ABLE. Again, that's something definitely want to consult legally, because there's first party trusts have language. So I had a case where a client had a first party trust and it said they could not use it for housing. Now, I think this is also a great reason to work with an attorney who specializes in this. CTFSN or myself would be happy to give recommendations, but the language does matter quite a bit. It's not something you want ambiguous. So we came up with the wonderful suggestion that because her brother is a contractor and the trust will pay for education, I suggested, why doesn't the trust pay to have the brother teach her to build a house? Now, I don't think that would actually work, but it was fun to think about in the moment. That would be, now in the question that proposed, a grandparent opened a special needs trust. If a grandparent opened it, then it's almost certainly what's called a third party trust. Third party trusts are somebody else's money. So let's say that Pat takes her son out to dinner. Okay, I'm going to pick on Pat, right? And let's say I'm Pat's son. I know it's her nightmare. And let's say that what would I prefer? Would I prefer to use my money to pay for dinner, or would I prefer Pat to pay for dinner? Pat?
Me or you? Whose point of view are we looking at
Who do
from?
I want to pay for dinner?
I assume you want me to pay for it.
Yes. So it's always better to use somebody else's money than your own.
Like all my kids, you want me to pay for it.
Of course, absolutely. So if it's the individuals, then it's their money. If Pat or a grandparent puts money in a special needs trust, then it was never the individuals. So I would almost certainly not recommend moving from a third party to an ABLE account. Again, Renee, it's very specific. Another advantage to, you know, if it, again, it depends on the language, depends on the type of third party trust. However, that is something, you know, the language, things to consider. Sometimes we do have the grandparents open it, then the parents can contribute. So, and again, it really depends on the language for the trust. As a general rule, most third-party trusts I find are, and I'm skipping, this is a lot of crap, lawyer stuff. I just forgot this is being recorded. Anyway, so, but again, as a general rule, I do find that these third-party trusts are not usually funded until after the passing of, let's say, the parent, sometimes the grandparent. So they can be established either in your will or separately from a will. And they are usually funded at the passing. So therefore, the parent or the grandparent has the money in their account, and after they pass away, then the trust is funded. So there's actually no money in that special needs trust. And that is usually the way it's recommended. Now, there are two types. You can do it as part of a will. And that means the trust is set up by the court after the person passes away. The advantage is also a disadvantage. That means that you have court oversight. So you might still have to go to the court. There's annual reporting. We have fees with probate court to go in front of a judge. There's more checks and balances. This can be a very positive thing if you want those checks and balances to be there for the person of the trustee of the money. I would make the argument that there are usually better options, but definitely not always. There are companies who specialize in being trust companies. Attorneys have trust services. Financial advisors and companies can work with companies for trust services, generally requiring a higher dollar amount and extra fees. So if there are friends and family who can be trustees, I find that's generally a good thing. But the other part I want to at least mention is that it might not make sense to be set up in the will if there's multiple people leaving assets. For example, two grandparents, two parents, you could end up with 4 special needs trusts, all needing to be supervised by the court. If they were a separate document, standalone, then you would only need one and everybody could fund it. They're still usually mentioned in the will, but that's something that I would encourage people to carefully review. Question. I am confused. We opened a trust for a daughter funded with insurance upon death. We had to furnish a copy to SSA and state DDS, and they wanted a payback if she's passed away. Marianne, I'm really confused too. So I would say that doesn't make a lot of sense. And there could be things that I am missing. There could be other reasons. If you want to message me after, my contact information is here. I'm offering not just on ABLE accounts, but in general, some free consulting services to anybody who needs it during this time. So please don't hesitate to reach out to me. So to Marianne, even if I am missing something, it seems like something that should probably be changed.
Okay.
I think we had a question, Andrew. There's someone on the phone. Was someone on the phone? I've got 2 telephone numbers. I don't know who they are, so I apologize. Did someone on the phone have a question? On the 767 number? Okay, sorry, go ahead.
I just picked this slide because I think this image is really funny. And then, so the first party special needs trusts generally find the life insurance settlement, or if money was left to an individual without a third party special needs trust set up, then in order to keep the benefits, they would need to then establish a first party special needs trust. Just imagine Pat is taking you out to dinner. Do you want to use her money or do you want to use your own money? That is the, and ABLE accounts are, as a general rule, more similar to first party trusts. So they do have a payback provision. I do think they offer many, many great opportunities. However, that is one of the reasons why for smaller dollar amounts, they make sense. But for larger dollar amounts, really should be looking at other options. There's lots of other planning strategies. It really, really depends on your unique situation. right now I'm just rambling for a few, so if people have questions, please ask. I find that ABLE accounts are a tool. They're not necessarily a destination. I have a quote that I use that you have to figure out where you want to go before how you're going to get there. So not that we're going anywhere lately, but generally speaking, if you want to go on vacation, well, whether you go on vacation to New York or California, well, that's going to make the difference between a train or a car or flying. Think of an ABLE account as, you know, a car or an airplane. It's a way to get you somewhere. Can it make sense? Almost certainly. But does it make sense? It really depends a little bit on your overall goals. I can't think of a reason why it would be bad for somebody to take $100 and open an ABLE account. So I will mention that. Sometimes it's good just to get started and to do a little bit of saving. It can also help with some level of independence, right? Giving an individual some money to spend, maybe a little bit of, you know, first, let's say, foray into investments, learn a little bit about how those work, something that they feel is a little bit more theirs. So for example, an individual can control their own ABLE account. They cannot directly control a first party special needs trust, or bi-directly, they also don't have mind control, so they can't mind control Pat to give over the money.
So can a person not be named as the trustee of their own account?
Correct. A great question. Thank you, Pat. A person cannot be named, well, they cannot control their own account. So with there needs to be a trustee. And this is common across almost every single sort of trust. The reason you're getting these benefits from a trust, whether they're tax benefits, whatever the benefit is usually because you're also giving up control, right? You're the grantor. You are giving the money to the trust, and therefore you are also no longer in control of it, again, to a certain extent. And because of that, you are offered these advantages. So Pat, let's just go with, generally speaking, that you are not the trustee of your own trust, but you can control your own ABLE account.
Okay.
Do I have any questions? Marianne, did I answer your question?
As a matter of fact, you did, because I've been wondering about this for a while. So it looks like we might need to make some changes.
I would be happy to, if anyone would like to, again, email me, if they would like me to look at something. Again, I'm not an attorney, but I could tell you enough to say, we should call one. Here's a couple names of ones to call, and take a look over it. Again, there could be details. For example, Marianne, and again, you could say you want to decline to answer. But if the trust owned the life insurance, then there's a chance, if it was done a certain way, that could, be regulated, some oversight. But as a general rule, I would encourage you, Mary, and to email me after, and if you want me to take a quick look at it. I would hope you're wrong. I mean, it doesn't sound like it, but it definitely sounds really strange to me. So,
Okay. Thank you.
so, yep. Any disadvantages to setting up a special needs trust for a 12-year-old? Don't know whether he will need to access SSI at this point. So, and I'll get to Richard's question after. So the answer is, there's two disadvantages. One is it's not free. You are going to pay an attorney some money to open one. The other disadvantage is depending on how it's opened. Good point. What if the individual does not need any benefits down the road? You do not want the money stuck in a trust even though they don't need benefits and they never will. I have a client who I met with, very similar situation. He is going to be an actuary. He is going to make more than the majority of people ever will, and he is not receiving any benefits. However, at the time, there was the chance that he might. So what I would strongly recommend is you want to prepare for the worst reasonably and keep flexibility. So for example, high level, you would probably want to have a special needs trust that's not funded until something happens to you. That would be a third party. And it could be funded with inexpensive term life insurance for the time being. And you would want it written with flexibility in mind that if the individual is not receiving benefits or, a whole host of other factors, that the money isn't tied up, for no reason. The only disadvantage to setting that up for a 12-year-old is if they did not ever need benefits of any kind, then you might have spent a little extra money on the attorney. However, then I would also argue it's a good idea to set up a trust because a 12-year-old can't get the money anyway. So actually, there's an argument that almost any parent of a minor children should probably consider having a trust for a whole host of other reasons. So I would say the biggest factor would be simply the money it would take. However, I do find that if you meet with an attorney, they do lots of documents together. They do the will, the power of attorney, the trust, all these other documents all work together. So generally an attorney won't just do a trust with somebody else's will. They're all going to want to redo it anyway. So to Lisa's question, to wrap up, just a little bit extra money versus getting the recommended estate planning documents that you would get anyway would really be the only negative if done correctly and not funded until it's needed. Moving on to Richard's question. Do you have to keep track of where money is spent in an ABLE account? Technically, the answer is yes. I say technically because I don't know anyone where the IRS has ever asked them, but they can. They should. When you file taxes and you claim deductions, many times the IRS does not ask for some of the proof. That doesn't mean that you should not have it. So you should absolutely keep great records. That is one of the reasons why I do recommend Ohio is they have a really great system. Like, the credit, like American Express used to be known for this, but now most other companies do a good job of categorizing your expenses automatically, what you're spending them on, things of that nature. So you do not need to submit the receipts to anyone. I would just hold them and just save them with your records. And who do you request the money from? Whoever has the ABLE account. So if it's Ohio, you just spend the money the debit card. If it's Fidelity, you just transfer it to the bank account at Fidelity and spend it. So it's very easy to spend the money from an ABLE account. Again, unlike a trust, it's very quick. You are able to do that. So if you think you are going to be actively spending with the ABLE account, then I would strongly recommend considering a state like Ohio that has a very robust system for keeping track of the expenses and a way to do that to make your life a little easier. However, if you're thinking for a big purchase. I have a friend who's who's putting money in her Able account to save to buy a therapy dog. That is a very specific goal and a very good goal at that. So I recommended Fidelity, because when she does take money out of the account, it's going to be a big purchase, very well documented, and not as often. And we were starting with a very low amount, so it also, you know, there was no maintenance fees.
Any other questions? Okay, one person had to sign out. Okay, you're welcome. Does anyone have any more questions for Andrew? Okay, we're going to be having another session next week. Next week is the one we're doing about government benefits and how the stimulus package money might affect it. So if possible, if you want to submit questions to me in advance, I can send them to Andrew so he has time to do some research.
She was sitting here.
And I do just have a really quick announcement or two. Our company does have a calendar of all the events going on in Connecticut. I pay somebody, if somebody could please mute.
Sorry, hold on. Someone's talking.
But it sounds like Greta did the right thing. You don't want to set up the special needs trust.
Someone who's on the phone. Who's talking? On the 767 number? Who's that? I'm going to mute you because we can hear you, okay?
Okay.
Go ahead.
So I do pay someone in order to find all the events going on and share them all. They're on our calendar. If you go to planningacrossspectrum.com, we have a calendar, or you could just go to events.planningacrossspectrum.com. Currently, given there really aren't events happening in person, we are highlighting all remote events, not just from here, but around the country, over Zoom, etc. So, and if you find something that we do not have, feel free to let us know. It's usually very, very jam-packed, whether it's an advocacy, an informational, a SEPTO, or CTFSN. It's almost certainly on our event calendar that we update and we just share to everyone as a resource. So everyone, please feel free to check out that website, and especially now, all the virtual events. We're doing our best to really try to gather those. It's a really nice, clean event calendar. Pat, do you mind if I show that really quick?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay.
And Pat, we will be sending out the new login information weekly,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, I just sent it out as a note. Yeah, I'll be sending out a new flyer tonight or tomorrow morning probably. So you can register, and you can register for any of the meetings. The flyer is specific to next week, but I have the note on there for the next two meetings as well. So it'll be every Tuesday for April with Andrew.
So currently, you can see I have a specific tag for online events. By default, we are only showing online events given the current state of affairs. So you can see even just for April 7th, how many events we've categorized that were going on today. And we try to post a flyer with information as possible. We've been running this calendar for well over a year. And again, currently, we're just highlighting the online events. So I really do encourage everyone to use this as a resource, submit feedback, and if there's something we missed, you can email us, or you can submit an event as well. Or if you just email me, we can take care of that. So are there any other questions?
Any questions? Sorry, I'm plugging my computer in because I'm about to. Any other questions? Okay, I think we're all set.
Oh, Renee, I can send the slides. I do have a 2-page ABLE flyer that really covers most of it, as well as a blog post I did specifically on Connecticut ABLEs. I do find it's a little bit better than the 40 pages, although Pat can absolutely send it to you. I would really encourage people to look at the, I'll do an email just with a blog post about Connecticut ABLE accounts, as well as that 1-page flyer. And if anybody does want the whole PowerPoint, again, you're more than welcome to it. Happy to answer any questions about anything during this time. And also, if you reach out to me and you want to get on that list for any legislative things that come up, I can forward that information along as well.
Okay, do any of the people, there are 2 people on the phone, and I just have your numbers. I don't have your names. Do you have any questions? I just unmuted you.
No,
Okay, and you are? Is this VJ? Who has the 7203767 number? Who has the,
Frank Spector.
oh, Frank, okay, I'm sorry.
Ivy's dead.
I'm sorry? And who has the,
It's Frank Spector. Ivy's dead.
oh, okay, all right, thank you, Frank.
Oh, so Renee, yes, we have a Facebook. I pulled it up. It's also in my email signature, Playing Across the Spectrum. We actually are very active on social media and do share at least a few different news stories a day that we gather, as well as CTFSN events, obviously, Pat.
Right. And who's on the 860-423 number? 860-423, can you hear me? Oh, wait a minute.
That's Lisa Clark.
Oh, Lisa.
So
okay.
Yep, because I don't have audio on my computer, so I'm in both ways.
Oh, okay. You're confusing me. All right. All right, thank you. All right, so
You're
I think we're all set. If, I think we answered everybody's questions. If anyone has an additional question, they can email Andrew directly, or you can email me and I can send it forward. And when Andrew sends me that he's got a 2-pager, I will send that out to everybody who was in on the call tonight, and I'll send out the flyer for next week's meeting. If anyone has any questions, okay?
Thank you.
I think
Pat,
that's,
unless you're shutting down, I'll stay on this for 10 minutes.
all right, we can stay on. I can leave
You
it
don't
on.
have to, Pat.
No, I can leave it on. I just plugged my, I had to run downstairs to get my plug for my computer. That's what was, if you saw me moving around, because my computer was dying. But if I can leave it on, if anyone has any questions, I think we're all set though. Heather, are you all set?
Yep.
Okay. I don't see, everybody's shut, everyone's going off now, Andrew, so.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You, oh, Abby had a question about where is the calendar?
You know what, Pat, you want me
I
just to
can send the-
include,
I'll send the link out to everybody.
well, I could send you one email, so then you can,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, Andrew will send me an email with a 2-pager and with the link to the calendar, and I will send it out to everybody. Anyone else? Okay, I think we're all
Really
set.
nice job. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank you
Trish.
very much.
Thank you.
Trish, the one thing I had trouble with, and I still can't find it, is I can't find any raising the hand.
Is that only for the webinar version? Have you done it with this version before?
Yeah, we did it the other day
If you click on participants at the bottom,
at the bottom.
at the
Yeah.
bottom, participants, and then the list comes up, and at the bottom right-hand side, it says raise hand.
See, mine doesn't say that. Mine says more, but it doesn't give me a raise hand option.
Oh, weird.
It did it the last time I was on one.
It gives me a
Let me,
little
here,
blue,
let me stop my share and see what happens.
it gives me a little blue hand.
Oh, see, now I see your hand now. I didn't have it. Maybe because
Yes,
Andrew
I
had
see
control
your
of the
hand.
screen.
Oh, I can raise my hand. If I click on me on that participant list, I can then raise my hand.
I can lower and raise.
Yeah, now I can. I think it's because Andrew had control of the screen.
I can't see that I'm raising my own hand.
You can't?
I
No.
can only see it on that list, Heather.
Yeah.
I've got participants and I can see
So-
your hand. Lower hand, yeah, I can see that. But I still don't have the option. Maybe because I'm the host.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. But I couldn't find it for anybody else while I was on, but no one raised their hand during the whole thing if they did, so.
But couldn't they just do like a thumbs up instead?
Yeah, I did have that. I had
Yeah.
the wave and the thumbs up thing.
Yeah.
So.
Mm. I do have
All right.
one quick question if you've got one more minute, Andrew.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
sure.
I was just, I've been told to apply for SSI for my daughter and for SSDI. And so I'm not sure which I apply for. She's 19 and she's still at school. Well, she would be.
Are both
Things were normal.
parents alive?
Yes.
Are they retired or disabled?
No.
Then she probably doesn't have enough work history to qualify for SSDI.
No, well, because she's at school.
Well, correct.
And
So
but she qualifies for DDS, and they said, I think they said SSI.
yeah, no, they did. She'll automatically get. You can have SSDI and SSI. You can have both. So
Okay.
and you'll know. So if
I don't know.
like for when you or her father retires, then she could be eligible for SSDI and Medicare, or assuming she works, she could have credit under her own work history.
Right. So until then, it's SSI.
Right.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yep.
I'll be back next week.
Oh,